It is the evening of the 27th of May 2017, and building contractors are finishing up for the day. They have been working on a new multi-use 4-storey building for the second busiest airport in the Netherlands. The project, which began the year earlier, is part of an overall expansion of the airport which began in 2012. The building is just 1 month away from its late June, early July opening, but today fate has a different idea. In a matter of moments, a 60-metre by 15-metre section of the top floor crashed down into the rest of the building, causing a partial collapse. My name is John, and welcome to Plainly Difficult. Today we're looking at this mess, the Eindhoven car park collapse. Today's video wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for my Patreon, YouTube and Ko-fi members. If you want early access to the channel's videos, then you can from just £1 per month. As always, the links will be in the pinned comment below. Background. Before we start, I'm just going to say that I like car parks. I mean, I hate parking in them, but something about building something solely for the housing of vehicles is a little bit amusing to me. But not only that, they're also a great opportunity to look at a skeleton of a building. I mean, imagine an office block minus all the furnishing, and you've got a car park. I know there's more to it than that, but I'm just a train and vintage music equipment loving idiot. This is Eindhoven Airport in the Netherlands, which is around here on a map. Its history goes all the way back to its grass runway beginnings in 1932. Quickly, the site would see more and more military usage as tensions grew on the continent, as a certain country was looking like it was going to kick off again. Well, they would kick off again and quickly take over the Netherlands during the 7-day Battle of the Netherlands. The Germans would repurpose the airfield, pave its runway and build a few buildings for aircraft. I should say that battle took place in the Second World War. The airport would change hands again a few years later when US paratroopers landed. The Dutch would get their airport back and under their control in 1952, and it became a vital part of the Royal Netherlands Air Force. Its main use as a military base would change in the early 1980s when a passenger terminal was constructed. Passenger numbers would grow over the next couple of decades, welcoming such prestigious and high-end airlines as Wizz Air and Ryanair. The airport's management wanted to further improve its amenities in the mid-2010s. The plan was to repurpose the site of the P1 car park opposite the terminal. The plan was to build more parking but combine it with extra restaurants, a kiss and ride zone, and a covered public transport terminal. The airport selected De Bever Architects to design their new building and awarded the construction to Royal BAM Group. The building was intended to be as green as possible, ignoring the fact that it was to be built from concrete. But the building was to make use of a fairly new system for reducing its need for such concrete, and that is this stuff, the bubble deck. It's an interesting one as it lightens concrete slabs by using recycled spherical plastic balls to create voids within the slab. This eliminates the majority of concrete from the middle of the floor slab. This area generally doesn't offer much of the slab's inherent structural strength. Thus, it reduces the dead weight of the slab, cutting down on weight and costs. In the top and the bottom of the slabs, there are reinforcement steel mesh, tied together with a lattice of steel beams. Voided slabs aren't a new thing, however, but the use of plastic spheres was the quote-unquote revolutionary new construction method. The slabs for the new building would be cast off-site at Bubble Deck's factory. However, the supporting columns, which were quite vital to the building, would be cast on-site in situ. During the building's construction, the slabs were raised and held in place on a support structure. After temporary installation, connections between the slabs and columns were made. This was steel reinforcement with poured concrete over the connections. Once sufficiently hard, the temporary support structure was then removed. The slabs were designed to be laid lengthwise as they transferred a load in two directions from its centre point to the supports. But an issue with the building would come around. requiring some changes to the usually installed method for bubble deck panels. In the car parking area, the distance between the supports was 15 metres. This was larger than the maximum precast slab of around 10 metres. Instead, it was decided to rotate the slabs 90 degrees, like so, placing multiple slabs next to each other to bridge the gap. In addition, the panels were arranged in an arch-like formation. This hoped to spread the load outwards like on the arch of a bridge. The coupling between these slabs and redirected support bands had to be beefed up, as the now coupling reinforcement will be required to carry the full load, but we'll remember that little bit for later on. Interestingly, when the tender was bid on by Bubble Deck, they didn't highlight the non-standard installation method. You see, having the archway installation actually came with a slight benefit. That was that there was always going to be a plan to add an additional layer of concrete on top of each floor to allow for some shaping for rainwater runoff. But with this arch, this requirement was pretty much met without the need for the extra concrete layer. In doing so, again, saving weight and that precious money. What a great workaround, you might say. The disaster. It is the 27th of May 2017, and the multi-use building is so very near completion. Work has just completed on the 4th floor, and the fit-out of the restaurants below was well underway. Opening is scheduled for around late June and early July. Workers in the 120 metre wide by 65 metre deep building are in the early evening packing up to go home. Close to 7 p.m, some strange noises could be heard from the 4th floor. In just a matter of moments, a 60 metre by 15 metre section of the top floor crashed down into the lower floors. This caused the lower floors to then collapse themselves, smashing concrete, steel and other debris out into the surrounding area. It caused a localised power cut which would hinder air traffic at Eindhoven over the following hours. The collapse had happened in just the blink of an eye without any real warning. Emergency services arrived on scene pretty quickly and began looking for survivors. But amazingly, all they found were just onlookers standing to the side. It was becoming apparent that the collapse was completely bloodless. And now I get to hit this lovely "no one died" button. A busy airport with traffic, workers and aircraft flying ahead, and not one single injury. Even when just moments before the collapse a car had driven by. It was probably a true miracle. Although no one was harmed, the airport's pockets would get a battering. It was estimated that the collapse caused €22 million worth of damage, both for the airport and local economy. As always, with unexpected self-dismantling of buildings, the cause had to be found out, which leads us on to the investigation. Royal BAM Group and the airport would conduct their own investigation into the collapse, releasing its findings in September 2017. They blamed poor shear strength at slab connections, exacerbated by the some 30-degree centigrade temperatures leading up to the collapse. But this cause did not mention the change to the as-intended installation of the slabs. However, someone had noticed this change. Although the contractor had released their report, another very in-depth investigation would be launched by the Dutch Safety Board, who would come to a very different conclusion. They pored over the rubble and the as-built plans, and a concern was highlighted. You guessed it, the rotation of the slabs 1/4 turn from how they are normally installed. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the coupling between the slabs needed to be beefed up. Well, guess what? They weren't. And this left a vulnerability. This was from heat which came around during the hot spells of weather like what had hit Eindhoven in May of 2017. This caused the couplings to expand, which in turn caused buckling across the slabs, which then in turn caused the collapse. The change in installation did not trigger any concerns with the developers, as noted by the Safety Board report. At that time, none of the parties saw these signs as a reason to call the structural safety into question, although they could and indeed should have done so, which puts the blame from what BAM said, imperfect adhesion between the floor slab, back to poor decision making, pointing the finger right back at the developers, as noted in the report. Failure to understand the consequences of the floor design was therefore the direct cause of the collapse. It was also apparent that stress cracks had formed prior to the collapse, which all concerned should have been investigated. However, they did not. Again, quoting the report. There were clear signs during the tendering process and in the implementation phase, including the formation of cracks and puddles, to indicate the presence of structural safety failings. In the aftermath, BAM would have to rebuild the failed building and reach a settlement with the airport in private. The new building was completed in October 2019. So that's my video on the Eindhoven building collapse. It's going to be a 2 on my scale, and this is what I got for my root cause analysis card. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. This is a Plain Deal production. All videos on the channel are Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike licensed. Plain Deal videos are produced by me, John, in the currently quite warm corner of Southern London, UK. And all I said today is thank you very much for watching, and Mr. Music, can you do me a favour and play us out please?